on the stories and not the headlines.
Because we believe that stories can change the world. Get ready because the show starts now.
Hey there, Speropictures crew. Welcome back to Coming Attractions. I'm your host, Joy Thayer.
And I am the other host, Mr. Joy. And today we're talking about a movie that is kind of almost like coming attractions. It's in investment phase. It's a good friend of ours, Ashley Bratcher, who was in the movie Unplanned. We met her there, and this is her next project, which is really, really cool.
I wanted to say, usually we try to keep our intros short, but I wanted to say a few things about Ashley because, I mean, we both worked with her on Unplanned. I have a scene with her in the film, and you did all of
I did all the interviews for like the behind the scenes and like the DVD, interview things and stuff like that.
But even though we worked with her, right now I was reading her bio before we were coming on, and her bio says Ashley's an award-winning actress, producer, and a star of the box office hit Unplanned. She is from Campbell University, Bachelor of Arts and cum laude graduate of an honor at Notre Dame alumni. She worked for the film industry She worked in the film industry for over a decade. I was going to say for over 40 decades. I was like, she's not even 40 years old yet. And if she's over 40, Ashley, dang, whatever you're doing looks great. With 40 film and television credits to her name. In addition to her work on screen, Ashley is dedicated to using her platform to encourage positive change. Her philanthropic efforts include founding a scholarship to provide financial materials assistance to mothers seeking to continue their education. I think that's so significant because I was one of those young single moms, that put myself through college, and having people that are willing to support you and help is just awesome. So not only is she telling female-driven stories that are impactful, she's also putting her money where her mouth is. And we are so excited to hear more about her new movie.
Yeah, her new movie is called Pharma, and she's just done a proof of concept for it. She's raising some investment funds. But to hear from her herself, let's just bring her on.
We are so excited, Ashley, that you're here with us today. It's been a long time. We got to know each other on the set of Unplanned. We have some questions about that.
Yeah. So what was it like working on that? Because, I was there, I was behind the scenes. Joy played a small role and then was one of the producers. But, what was your experiencing working on that movie?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, and it's great to see your faces. It has been a long time. Unplanned was a life-changing experience, to say the least. Not knowing a ton going into it, which was intentional on the part of Chuck and Carrie, who directed and produced the film. Just coming to set and I think having so many incredible experiences with other people and God kind of moving in a way that revealed parts of my life I didn't know were going to be impactful in telling this story. There's no other project I can even compare it to. And the things that happened on that set are kind of divine and mind-blowing. When you try to explain to people, people are like, wait, what? That happened on your set? There's just nothing else to compare it to. It was a once-in-a-lifetime, I feel like, experience in a movie that's going to be a really hard act to follow in my career because it had such an impact on people's lives personally.
Yeah. How did you end up getting involved with that, and why did you say yes? Because I know I have personal reasons for the yes in that one, but want to know why you would take on such a controversial role that could be, career changing.
Initially, I didn't even know about the audition. I didn't know anything about the project. I had a woman on Instagram reach out to me who was loosely connected to some people that were working on it, and she just said, "Hi, I've been in this screenwriting class, and Ashley, you don't know me, but I have been praying for you for a couple of years, and I just feel like the Lord has told me that you're meant to play the role of this woman named Abby Johnson." And I was like, okay, this is kind of a weird message because I didn't know her. And so I was like, oh, you're so sweet. Like, thank you. And that was it. And then I think a week or two had passed, and she reached out to me again. And she said, "Ashley, did you ever audition for that role? I just really feel like you're supposed to play it." And I thought, I usually do things through my agent, but I said, if you have a way, I wasn't busy at the time. And I said, so if you have a way to get me the sides, a couple pages of the script to read, I'll consider auditioning. It was Sheila. Sheila Hart was the producer that she knew somehow. But anyway, so she got some of the sides from Sheila. Sheila sent them to me and I put myself on tape. I mean, I was a nobody. Like Chuck and Carrie had no idea who I was. After I did the audition, I started researching Abby because I had heard she was a real person. And I was like, okay, well, she seems like an interesting person. Let me find out more about her. And when I heard her testimony, that changed everything for me because I didn't know what happened during an abortion procedure. And I was just shocked that I feel like I had been lied to and blind for so long. And it rocked me to my core because I had been one of those people who was on the fence. It was like, oh, I'd never have an abortion, but if someone else wants to, I understand. I knew people who'd had abortions. And then all of a sudden I was incredibly spiritually convicted to tell other people. Mm-hmm. And so I got very I got very connected to this role, and I just prayed about it so much, and I started to believe. I felt like I was meant to be a part of this movie, and I didn't know what that looked like, but I kept praying about it, and for weeks and weeks and weeks, I just wouldn't let it go. I mean, I would cry to my husband and be like, I can't let this audition go. I know I should, but it's staying with me. And then finally, I had gotten a call from Sheila, and she told me that I was in top consideration for the role, that the producers wanted to talk to me on the phone, got on a call with them so they could interview me. And I'll never forget them saying, Ashley, if you take this role, it could end your career. You may never work in Hollywood again. You may get blacklisted. And because I think that God had prepared me at this point in my life, I had been through so much in my walk with the Lord that I had finally gotten to a point where I knew that my worth was in Christ. It didn't matter what projects I did or what success looked like. I just knew that I wanted to do what I felt like was right and would serve the Lord. And so I told them, I said, well, that's okay because I don't find my worth or my value in my projects. And I don't serve directors. I serve the Lord. And I remember Carrie going, okay, well, that's nice. Thanks for sharing. We have one other person in consideration. So we'll let you know tomorrow. And then, later come to find out that Daryl Lefevre, who was or Chris Jones and Daryl Lefevre were in the background, going like this, get her on the plane, get her on the plane. And Chuck and Carrie, I guess, still weren't convinced. But the next day they did call me. Chris called me up and he said, Ashley, we're so excited to offer you the role of Abby. Can you get on the plane in 5 hours? Yeah. And it was just this whirlwind experience that was not normal by any sense of the industry. And I just said, I guess nothing's impossible. Called David, my husband, and I was like, hey, I got the part. I'm leaving before you get home from work.
Love you, bye.
Pack my bags. Yeah, I packed my bags for 7 weeks to go out to Oklahoma from North Carolina and, kiss my son bye that morning, and there off I went. Yeah. And then from there, it was just different experience after experience and instances on set where it was so evident that I was supposed to be there and that God was doing something really special with this movie.
I have to say that I remember meeting your husband, and he is a super cool dude.
I hear that a lot.
Yeah, he's super.
I feel like
cool.
people trade me in. They're like, "Okay, nice to meet you, Ashley. I'm going to go hang out with David."
Not true. That's not true.
So how has that role affected your career?
Yeah.
I think that there's not been any sort of intentional blacklisting that I feel like I've experienced. I have great relationships with casting directors, and I have gone about my life in a way that when I have difficult conversations, I have a lot of empathy and compassion for people, and I'm very open-minded to hearing what people have to say. So I think that because I've been able to present myself in that way and engage in difficult conversations with people, that all across the board in Hollywood, for lack of better terms, people in the industry do seem to respect me regardless and appreciate who I am as a person. So I've not seen any sort of backlash in terms of the auditions that I get, but it has changed my career in the sense that I became very intentional with the kinds of projects that I wanted to do. And Chuck and Carrie encouraged me to start producing because they saw something in me that they thought would be a good producer. I now have a love-hate relationship with them for that because producing is really, really hard. But it expanded my career and gave me a deeper respect.
Dang it.
Because it's hard. And I'm happy. I'm happy that I did it. But yeah, I've become very intentional with my career.
Yeah. I think that that's such an important thing, because one of our goals with this show here is we're not podcasters. This is not what we set out to do, but we said, stories change the world, and we want to be a part of stories that matter. And what we've been facing the last few years, even with our experience on Unplanned, was the level of censorship and getting stories out there. And important stories like what you're doing right now, that what you're getting ready to do on screen is something that's huge. And we want to talk a little bit about, you've got 3 things going on at one time. Tell us a little bit. Tell us a little bit about what's your next project and why people need to know about it.
Well, the very first thing that I optioned after Chuck and Carrie encouraged me to start producing was a feature film called Pharma. I found this script buried in a database of other scripts online. I plugged in all these filters. I knew exactly what I was looking for. I wanted a female-driven story. I was really interested in true stories, and I just love period pieces. So when I found Pharma, and it was the true story of Dr. Frances Kelsey and the thalidomide scandal of the 1960s, another story I had never heard before in my life, but this incredibly strong, courageous woman who stood up to the pharmaceutical giant of the 60s and the FDA. I was like, wow, this is exactly the kind of content I want to make. And so I optioned the script in January of 2020. And then COVID hit. And so, talk about being a first-time producer and experiencing challenges. Yeah. Going out and trying to fund a movie in the middle of the pandemic was not what I had in mind. But, we found a really amazing seed investor, an angel investor. Her name is Nicole Weeder, and she put funding into the development of the film during the pandemic. And we just really had to figure out a way to push through development that year to keep momentum and really breathe life into this project despite all those challenges. So it was in, I think it was even like going into 2022. I mean, we had spent all this time trying to figure it out, because 2020 and even 2021, the industry was so shaken up that you couldn't really do anything, especially as a first-time producer doing a period piece. And so just maintaining momentum, going through rewrites, like digging into the script was so important. And in 2022, we were like, okay, let's figure out something else. We've gotten an LOI from a major studio. There's interest here, but we really need to raise some capital to do this thing on our own, to get the cast and whatnot that we need. And so in 2022, we filmed a short film and a proof of concept for Pharma, which is, I think, what we're going to show in just a few minutes. But we did that in order to show the public that this is the story we want to tell, to educate people and raise awareness that this is a feature film that we feel like needs to be made, and to let others know that you can invest in film. Like, you can be a normal person and you can actually own a piece of a movie if you believe in it. And that was the whole point of the short film. It's kind of backwards. I feel like some people create a short film. They're like, I have this idea and then we're going to make a movie. But we already had the idea. We already had the feature film, and we had to figure out a way to keep momentum going. And that was a way that we could show people this is what we want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's very, actually, it's pretty common. I think, Whiplash was actually done that way, where they had the full feature, and they decided to take a piece out of the feature and create a short film. It's actually more of a scene, but
that's awesome.
Yeah. So, but anyway, why don't we go ahead and play the pitch video? It's got some of the talking about the feature, but then also a little bit of what you filmed in the short.
I had a job at the FDA. They didn't like the questions I was asking.
You heard that I fired Barbara Moulton. Don't make me do the same to you.
The FDA is corrupt.
Trying to change the drug laws is a political landmine.
Bribery, off-the-books consulting fees, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Merrill Pharmaceuticals is working with convicted Nazis. They're approving unsafe drugs. This has to stop.
I need proof.
I want to start a new war. You've just watched a short proof of concept for Pharma, a feature film that chronicles the courageous true story of Dr. Frances Kelsey, who risked her career and her family as she waged war against Big Pharma. She resisted intense opposition from inside the FDA in order to expose the biggest unmonitored drug trial in U.S. history. This is a David and Goliath type story. Frances Kelsey was one woman up against the billion-dollar pharmaceutical company and faced so much resistance within her own government agency. I can't imagine what it would be like to work within the FDA and try to fight this corruption and then be trailed by Big Pharma, risk her career and her family. JFK went on to award her a presidential medal for her work.
In the 1960s in the US, drug regulation was surprisingly loose. Doctors were allowed to give out samples of medication to patients without their knowledge that it was an experimental drug. I was shocked to learn that even pregnant women were given experimental drugs without their consent.
Frankie learned that thalidomide, a drug sold all over the world, second only to aspirin, was linked to birth defects. When she raised these concerns with the FDA and Big Pharma, she was threatened to be fired, to be deported. Frankie also discovered that Grunenthal, thalidomide's creators, employed more Nazi war criminals than any other company in the world.
I'm fueled by a desire to make movies that matter. I'm a fighter, so I understand Frankie's passion. In 2019, I starred in the movie Unplanned. I knew taking on the role of Abby would come with consequences, but I was prepared for it. I think that doing that movie really shifted my perspective. I wanted to be a part of things that had impact in a positive way on people. We just want to shed a light on a hidden story in American medical history, because we know that when people don't know history, they're doomed to repeat it.
That is awesome.
Yeah. So, question. Did you have some sort of clairvoyance that there would be all of this global pandemic and, you know, all of these just, you know, I don't know, questions about the pharmaceutical industry when you're looking for this script?
No. You know, that's the divine appointment of it all. I think that is very similar to Unplanned, honestly, because I think when we did Unplanned, we had no idea that it was going to be at the center of controversy. But no, like I said, I optioned the script. I had started reading the script and negotiating the deal in early December of 2019, and then signed the agreement in January of 2020, just thinking, oh my gosh, this is an incredible story.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden there was a pandemic and I was like, what is happening? And it felt really divine. Like, this is the right time. And then Frances Kelsey, who worked at the FDA until she was in her 90s, she passed away, I think it was in like 2010 at the age of like 101, and hadn't been in the news since she passed away. But then all of a sudden in 2020, there she was in the news again. And the New York Times was saying, you know, like, everything that Frances Kelsey worked for is being destroyed by the FDA. And I was like, holy smokes, like, this is crazy. This is happening. But, you know, I've been having to trust the timing, because yes, there's been a global pandemic. But then Dopesick came out. Right. And then Painkiller recently came out. And then Pain Hustlers, I think, is on Netflix right now. And it was like, all of a sudden, these shows were seeing, you know, the profitability of doing movies and shows about Big Pharma. And it's a hot topic. But I see that as something that's complementary, not competition, because our story is like the prequel to them all. It's where everything started. You know, this is the 60s. This is when the FDA started to have drug regulation. But is it reflective of what's going on today? That's part of the conversation, right? Is that you can't deny true stories. And that's what I love about this one, is that this woman was recognized by JFK and nobody really knows who she is. And I wonder why. Like, I have questions about that myself. But I think bringing her story to light is going to start a lot of great conversations that are like, hey, did we have problems from the beginning? And have we really fixed those problems?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, I want to hear what you have to say, but I think that this is such a timely thing and it's very significant. And like you're saying, it's not that those other films that you're talking about are in competition, because it's an entirely different story and a different angle that you're coming from. You know, I remember when Dallas Buyers Club came out, and my dad was dealing with cancer at that time. And so it was really interesting because we were trying to figure out what treatments we wanted to have him go through or not go through or all that kind of stuff. And so just doing the research of what is actually beneficial for his particular needs. Having somebody, having a child that was severely disabled, that was something I was dealing with all the time with the medical community is, do I trust this or do I trust that? I'm my son's advocate. So I had to be the one that was doing all of the research. But this story is so great and different. One, because Dallas Buyers Club, they still had some gratuitous sex. They had some gratuitous things that were in there that didn't need to be in there to tell the story. And you tell stories in such a tasteful manner that people can be entertained the entire time, but I'm not over there having to hide anybody's eyes on something that's going to be on screen as well. And, you know, Matt was pointing out earlier, this is kind of like Hidden Figures. This is kind of like Tucker, A Man in His Dream. This is kind of, you know, something that we
people love that kind of story, you know, the David and Goliath exposure of corruption, you know, kind of thing, and why do you think movies like that resonate with people?
I think a lot of Aaron Brockovich too when I think of this movie, or, you know, The Post or Spotlight, which, for example, let's talk about, I mean, Spotlight had very heavy content, but they did it in a way where I felt like it wasn't gratuitous. I mean, good gracious, talk about a hard story to tell. But I mean, they did it in such a tasteful way, I felt like, and Hidden Figures especially is another one that we do compare our project to a lot. And odds. I feel like it's one of those underdog stories, and people relate to that because I think we all aspire to do the things that these characters do. We aspire to be that brave and courageous. And I think that when you tell a story in a way that we don't have to be distracted by the things that make us really uncomfortable to watch on screen, like the gratuitous sex, that we're really able to focus on the heart of the story, which is to be courageous and bold and do the right thing in life.
Yeah. I personally think that this film has the potential to be an Academy Award winning film. Like the quality in which, you know, the acting, the script, the craftsmanship and everything. And so right now, one of the issues that you, not maybe issues, not the right word, but one of the things that you need is the funding and going outside of the box for some of that funding. Tell us how you're funding this film and why you chose that route and how people can help get behind it.
Yeah, I love that you recognize that you think it could be Academy Award winning. I mean, we do too, but the script actually placed in the top 10% for the Academy's Nickel Fellowship. So it has a claim behind it. And I was shocked that no one had found it before me and just, you know, scooped it up. So it's a really great script. And I can also say that because I didn't write it. I just found it and was like, wow, this is incredible. But it was still hard. I think the challenge for me, the greatest challenge for me has been that I'm a first-time producer. And so studios don't want to take huge risk, and anything that they see as a liability, there's that factor, right? And as a first-time producer, unless you have someone really seasoned behind you, they're not usually willing to put up the money. And for us, I was able to get someone to give me an LOI to say, hey, if you construct the right team with the right cast, then we'll buy it, which is nice. It's nice to have to go and take to investors. And so that's what I did. I went to private investors and I said, here's what I have. And when that didn't bring enough money for me, because again, those investors have the same concerns, I still had some come in. I was like, okay, well, who is really interested in this story? The public. So let's try a crowdfund. Let's do regulation crowdfunding and give people opportunity to own what we think is going to be a classic. And when we put it out there, within 1 month, we raised over $450,000, I think it was, in a 30-day time span.
Yeah.
And then we did that first round and we closed it and we were like, okay, well, that's still not enough money to make the movie we want to make.
Right.
So, you know, like, what are we going to do? How are we going to use this money to keep, you know, the momentum going? And we've added new team members, which has increased investment. People like Mark Fincannon, who's an Emmy Award-winning casting director, has joined the team to be able to take it out to the talent we want to get. And then there was a strike, by the way, like, let's talk about that. You know, like, talk about another challenge. Like, a writer's strike happens, and so then studios don't want to talk to you. And then the actor strike happens, and we can't get anybody to read the script. So finally, that has ended, and we've been at a point where we're like, okay, well, since we couldn't do anything with actors, we opened up another crowdfund on WeFunder, which is still the same opportunity for people to own a piece of the movie. And within 40 days, I think we raised like $230,000 or somewhere around there. And that opportunity is open right now. And it's going to go through, I think it's January 21st is when this second round of crowdfunding closes. So people watching, if you want to own a piece of Pharma and be, you know, someone who owns a piece of a classic, then you can do that.
That's awesome. And I, helped raise some funds for different projects and stuff in the past. And I think one of the things that people need to understand is how much money goes into filmmaking. And, people will say, oh, wow, $100,000 is a lot of money. Well, not when it comes to filmmaking. We've done commercial work for that kind of project and amounts of money. And so we're dealing with these studios that are doing things for 50, 60, hundreds of millions of dollars. And as independent filmmakers, we have become very creative on how to do things on a minimal budget. And so your budget isn't astronomical whatsoever. And it's something that people can invest in at whatever level they can get involved in. So what is your budget right now? And then what is your lowest threshold for people to invest?
The minimum investment is $100, and the overall budget for the movie, we've been able to get it down to $6 million. So we can raise $5 million through crowdfunding. And now $6 million to do a period piece, that's another thing that people don't really quite think about, right?
Yeah.
I have to be able to make this movie look like it's set in 1960. So that requires special cars, special wardrobe, special props, things that I have to go out and find to really make that happen. People who are specialized in doing period work, which they're not cheap movies to make. So if I can get my budget down to $6 million, I've done a really good job of figuring out ways to get creative. The dream budget for the project is $14 million, but we've been able to scale it back to $6 million, which is really impressive and gritty and creative for a period project, because there's so many different things that we have to pay attention to make it work. But because of the relationships we've established and different locations we've scouted and people that we know that are really, really good at their job, we've been able to kind of minimize the risk for investors by getting that budget down. Now, if we get 14 million, hey, we're going to do it. We're going to go after an ensemble A-list cast. But at the budget we're looking at, one major A-list star and then putting great supporting actors around them to create this beautiful movie. But people can invest for as little as $100. You go to Invest in Pharma, PH. A lot of people ask that. Investinpharma.com, and you can own a piece of our movie for as little as $100. And you can actually be in the movie for $1,000. So if there's someone watching who's like, oh, I've just always wanted to visit set and be in a movie, well, you can do it for $1,000.
Nice.
Wow, that's really cool. I think that's what's so fun about what's going on in our industry right now, is that it's not just the opportunity to be able to create some of these films, but then to create some really interesting funding mechanisms and models and things like that, for, like you're just saying, like people can invest, but then also be a part of the film. With all of the disruption that's going on right now, there seems to be a shift in the landscape of films and what's the audience is wanting. Because we just saw the Marvels just tank. Like, it was the worst opening for Marvel, and it seems like we're kind of running out of this franchise. There's a franchise fatigue that's happening. Do you think that the audience's tastes are shifting towards more smaller films that are actually about real people? So like you said, some of these things that have happened in the past where we're like, how did we not know about this?
Right.
How did we not know about this story or this person? These biographies. Do you think that the audience's tastes are starting to shift to that?
I think that people are craving the cinematic experience again, that people want to come back to the theater. And I think that marketing, a lot of the marketing teams for these movies that we've seen do well have done a great job of building up an experience or a community around their films. And we look at Barbenheimer, right, with Barbie and Oppenheimer premiering that same weekend and just being an incredibly great marketing ploy. But look who showed up. People were spending all day in the theater, and it was an experience. You dressed up with your friends in pink and you went and saw Barbie, or, like you planned that you were just going to be there all day and you were going to watch great films in the theater. And original content, like it's not Barbie's the sequel. It's not like Oppenheimer's ever been done. I think people are craving original content. There is that franchise fatigue. We're so tired of remakes. Look at everything that Disney is doing. We're so bored. Like, I don't want to go to the theater and see something predictable that I already know. I want to have an experience. And I was just at a festival this weekend where I got to see one of the premieres of The Taste of Things. And it is the French, what do you call it? It's the French selection for the Oscars, I guess, for the international selection. It is a movie that I would never have thought I'd go see in a theater. And it is absolutely beautiful and such a cinematic experience. And there's hardly any conflict, but you're watching these people who are cooking these beautiful gourmet meals, and you're hearing the sizzle of the pan, and you're watching the food come across. And it's just such a beautiful film, and it's so small, and the relationship is just like so profoundly subtle. But the experience in the theater, I wouldn't trade for the world. And I think that's something that like we all just want again, right? Like we want to go to a theater. It's the one time. We're also busy now, right? So I think it's the one time we've all been supercharged. We learned how to work at home through a pandemic. We're all like, we've been stuck inside. And it's the one time where we go, and if you're a good human being, you turn off your phone, right?
Yeah.
And you're like in this black box where you're immersed in something. And I think that people are craving that experience again, to be able to go and enjoy and then have something to talk about afterwards that maybe they didn't know. Or like this film for me in particular, we left and we were like, what a beautiful love story. It's all about cooking, but it's a love story. And my husband was like, that's one of the best films I've ever seen, which I didn't expect because it's all in French and it's
Yeah.
Oh man.
but anyway, he really loved it, and I did
That's
too.
awesome. Well, I want to ask, go back to the money on how much you need, how much you've raised, all that kind of stuff. What do people get for $100? Because I'll tell everybody out there right now, Matt and I are going to do $100 today. And so we're going to get off of this podcast. We're going to invest $100. But I'm looking at also as a donation, whether we got anything from that investment or not, we're investing in the future of filmmaking, and that's you. So, but let's say that this movie hits big, which we're anticipating. What would we get for that $100 in return?
All investment is recouped at 120%. So it's your initial investment plus 20% on top of that. That's our structure. And then it's a 50-50 split between the producers and the investors. But the producers don't get paid back until the investors have hit their 120%. So if you invest $100, the goal for us is to get you $120 back, and then for you to own a piece of the movie forever and ever and ever, as long as it's profitable. And if you invest $100, what you're getting is exclusive access behind the scenes. You're part of our VIPs. You're going to be able to see what we're doing that other people aren't going to be able to see. You're essentially getting a peek behind the curtain, where we pull it back and say, just for being an investor at $100, you get to see behind the scenes. And you'll notice that as you scroll down to the bottom of the page, there's a whole different level of perks. Like I mentioned, $1,000 gets you on set, and you can gift that to someone else. So like if you're like, oh, wow, my granddaughter would really like to do this, then you can invest and then gift that to someone else who might want to do
That's
that.
really cool.
So it's a really nice gift idea if anyone's looking for like a Christmas present right now. But yeah, so this goes into our perks. But it's different levels. And I think there's one for everyone depending on their budget. And like you said, there is the option of at $100, you really are just investing in the future of filmmaking and the kind of stories that you want to see told. You're using your pocketbook to say, these are the kind of movies I want to see get out there.
Can you bring up the perks again there, Alex?
No, I think that if you have the finances to invest $100, $1,000, $10,000, $100,000, or $1 million, that Ashley needs to raise all of this money, and the sooner that she has it raised, the sooner that we can be enjoying this in the theater. So help us, help Ashley, help us watch a film. And but again, $100, like you said, for just. This is something that we want to support. We want to get behind. And if we lost $100, I don't know how many people have lost $100 on buying clothes that they hate and don't ever wear, and so let's at least buy something. Let's put our money into something that's worth it. And, and then watch us get the return on investment on there and get this movie.
Well, yeah, and get these kind of stories out there because, like you were saying, I think people are interested in going to the theater. I think that, that's one of the things that people are starting to get, again, fatigued about is the streaming and just being at home and, kind of like this individual consumption of story, which I think that that's fine because there's always been the novel, which has always been, primarily an individual reading a book but there is a communal aspect to storytelling that has always been there. Back when, we were gathering around campfires and listening to the elders of the tribe tell the histories and the stories and everything else, like there's always so there's this shared experience about going to the theater. And it's just, there are many ways in which human beings consume storytelling, and cinema really is our kind of gathering around that campfire, so to speak.
But one more thing, we started with saying you're doing multiple projects. One of the things that you're doing that's unique, or seems to be unique, is you're doing a documentary as well. Tell us about that.
When we started promoting Pharma on social media and we were building our audience, it is a true life story that impacted a lot of people. There were over 10,000 babies born around the world in the 60s without arms and legs because of this drug being given to their mothers for morning sickness. And when we started to build awareness online, we started to have thalidomide survivors, people who were born without arms and legs, who are now in their 60s, reaching out to us and saying, oh my gosh, nobody's ever told our story. And our story, it really does touch on the aspect of living with the ramifications of this event. There's a mother in our story who has a baby born with birth defects because of the drug. And these people started reaching out to us, and I just thought, oh my goodness, maybe this is part of the timing, because this story is so much bigger than just a movie. There's real people here in the US who've never received any recognition or restitution for what happened to them. And I thought their stories need to be told too. So let's give them a platform alongside of our movie. I'm going to go out, I'm going to interview them. And in addition to saying, hey, they're saying we support the movie and we want it to come out. Thank you. But I'm also giving them the opportunity to tell their stories. And we're filming now, and it's my directorial debut for a feature. But I've been going to them to the Capitol. I was in Washington, D.C. a couple of weeks ago filming footage because we're actually working on legislation to get them recognized for the first time in the U.S. And Senator Kennedy and Senator Cassidy in Louisiana have sponsored a resolution that will recognize them for the first time. And it should be going across the Senate floor anytime now. So we're really excited that they're going to get that recognition. We see it coming. But that's part of the documentary, is showing how these real people were impacted and telling the story of Dr. Francis Kelsey as well.
That's awesome.
Wow. And what a great way to also research the project too, and, and everything else, and hearing some of their stories. And I mean, just wow. Like that's really cool. And it's so cool. Like I said, it's like just the way that storytelling is shaped nowadays, where it's like you can do a documentary, you can do, these awareness pieces, you can create a really cool period piece, a narrative, a story that's, for the cinema, but then also doing these additional kinds of offshoots, that help to bring even more awareness and actually changing legislation. It's just really cool what you're doing.
Yep. And it's such a great impact that you're having. This is a story that's changing the world, and so excited. Thank you for being willing to take on another hard task.
Yeah, who knew what I was getting myself into? I was like, okay, I'd love to do movies that matter, but also I guess I'm going to go to the Capitol and meet with senators and congressmen, because that sounds like what a filmmaker should do while they're making a movie.
Right.
So one more time, where can people invest, and where can people keep up with what it is that you're doing?
If you go to www.investinpharma, Pharma, investinpharma.com, that's where you can actually invest. You can also follow the project at pharmathemovie.com. It's a lot of the same information, but you can sign up for our email list there and see more of the videos from survivors. There's actually videos of survivors on the website, pharmathemovie.com. And you'll see all of our social media linked there, and we keep that up to date. And we try to fill everyone in on social media, but our VIPs, our investors, they get information that not most of the general public is privy to.
Nice.
Awesome.
I might increase our investment to $1,000 so I can be in another movie with Ashley, and we can just continue that. Every movie, there's just a little cameo of us that are in there. I could wear
pink again?
I could wear the pink cowboy hat again.
Our clip.
I'll talk to Matt. If you see $1,000 investment, you know what's happened.
Okay, good to know.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Ashley. And everybody right now, go to investinpharma.com. Is that correct? Investinpharma.com. Get out your check, your credit card, your debit card, whatever you need. Invest in this film. Let's get another great project out there. And the sooner you invest, the sooner that Ashley can start on the next project, because we've seen her act before. We're excited about her acting in this one, and we want to see lots more to come.
No,
right?
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
All right. We'll be talking soon.
For me, being in the film industry has always been about more than just making movies. I have always wanted to be a part of stories that matter and be able to reach people and impact the world in a positive way. So working on Pharma is incredibly important to me because I know that there are people living who were affected by this drug. All over the world, thalidomide affected over 10,000 to 20,000 babies who were born with severe birth defects or miscarriages or died when they were born. The work of Dr. Frances Kelsey is so important. I was completely shocked that I had never heard about her in history class. She prevented widespread tragedy in the US, and because of Dr. Frances Kelsey blocking it in the United States, there could have been so many more who were affected here. And she's the one who's responsible for really preventing that tragedy from being worse in the United States.
You know what? I feel so honored and privileged that we get to do these interviews and share stories with other filmmakers and everything. That's always been on our heart, is to promote other people's projects as well as our own projects. But I'm genuinely excited about this project.
Yeah. No, I didn't know anything about the project. I had heard that because we know Ashley, and all of a sudden I was like, oh, what Ashley doing? And she's working on Pharma. I honestly thought it was something that she got passionate about because of the pandemic and all of the other things. But
you didn't realize.
She said, I didn't realize that she had the script beforehand. But no, absolutely. This is the type of film that I think that audiences want, that people love to watch, like, you know, Tucker Man in His Dream, you know, like these types of Hidden Figures, like we mentioned, but the types of projects of these underdog stories of exposing corruption. And more and more we find out that there's a lot of corruption that needs to be exposed. And so these types of stories are really, really timely and exciting that people can get involved at such a, $100.
Right. $100.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And actually own the film. This isn't just like a Kickstarter.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Right? This isn't like, oh, hey, you get a T-shirt or a postcard. Thank you. You know, it's like you actually get to own a piece of the movie. Yeah.
And I think that we can, I know inflation is hard right now and that people are tightening up their purse strings, but I know, like I said, we're going to be investing in this and we're going to be making sure that this film gets made however we possibly can, and super grateful for all that Ashley's doing. Very talented. If you haven't seen Unplanned and seen Ashley's acting,
very talented.
I highly encourage you to watch Unplanned, because so many people would tell me, oh, I can't watch it, it's too hard. There's so many other films that you've watched that are way harder than this, and the truth can be uncomfortable at times. You can close your eyes if it gets to a spot where that you it's hard for you to watch. It is not gratuitous. It's not. It is not in a fashion that is untasteful whatsoever. So go out, watch Unplanned, help Ashley make this film.
Yeah, go to investinpharma.com, and then that's where you can invest in the movie. And then if you want to keep track of what she's doing and, you know, I'm assuming they have like a newsletter kind of sign up. Then you can go to pharmathemovie.com to follow the journey.
Once you've invested, you're automatically signed up.
Right. Well, that's the other thing too. Yeah, exactly. If you invest $100, then you get the investor updates, like she was saying.
And I would even encourage you, if you don't have $100, that you go in with 5 of your friends. Everybody do $20, and it's kind of like buying a lottery ticket. You know, if we win, we all win together, and if we don't, we don't. You know, see what you can come up with. Get creative and figure out how you can. Yeah,
no, a lot of people are looking for ways to get involved in different in different causes, right? So like you have your regular nonprofits or maybe a political campaign or things like that. But this is just a really cool way that you can be a part of something that matters, but then also it's not just a donation, it's actually an investment.
Right.
Like she was saying, you get 20% back on whatever it is that you put in if the film does well. Now, again, there's no guarantee, but it sounds like, and I know Ashley, and I know she's a fighter, and I know that she's this type of person that, once she gets her fingers into something, she's going to hold on for dear life and make it happen. Yeah. And so this movie is going to get made. And so it'd be really, really cool to be a part of it, and you can be a part of it. So investinpharma.com.
And until next time, God bless.
Talk to you later.